Hello, welcome to the Redecentralize interviews, and today we're talking to Sam Patterson from OpenBazaar. Hello, Sam.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Tell me about OpenBazaar. Briefly, what is it? How's it work?
Sure. So before I get into that, I'll tell you what it isn't. Right. So the standard way right now that we do commerce online is through these centralized companies, eBay, Amazon, Etsy, right? Everyone's used them. The issues with the current system is that these companies, they take a cut of each transaction, typically 10 or 15%. They monitor the data that has of all the trades that's being done on their platform, right? So everyone's selling, purchasing the transactions, the details of the buyer and the seller, et cetera. They also censor trade, right? Based on behalf of governments or based on their own interests, they will censor trade on their platform. For example, Amazon sells a media streaming device called a Fire Stick. They banned their competitor Google from selling their media streaming device, the Chromecast, right? So these platforms are willing to censor based on their own benefits. They use these tightly controlled payment systems. So credit cards, right, are tied to identity. You have to apply for them. They cost money. PayPal is similar. And so the bottom line is the current system is very tightly controlled and centralized. OpenBazaar is a completely different way of doing online trade. So what you actually do is you have a piece of software, which is free. It's open source. And anyone listening can download it from openbazaar.org. And you run it on your local computer, and it connects you directly to other people running the same piece of software. It creates this peer-to-peer network of people buying and selling goods and services with each other directly. So there's no middleman. There's no cut being taken, right? There's no 10 or 15% cut. There's no monitoring of data from any centralized source. So the data and every transaction is between the parties involved, the buyer and the seller. There's no censorship. Right.
So just to check, the total cut from like PayPal and eBay or Amazon is 10 or 15%, is it?
Or more if there are payment systems being used on top of it, right? So eBay might charge 10%, and then using PayPal could be 2 or 3%. Amazon might charge 15%, and the cut from a credit card could be 3%. So it varies. Etsy has a little bit cheaper, but a lot of centralized platforms are roughly 10, 15, maybe even 20%. So on OpenBazaar, that cut doesn't exist because there's no one in the middle. And that allows people to trade without censorship as well, right? Literally, it's computer A connecting to computer B, the buyer and the seller. And so no one can come in and stop that trade from occurring. And it uses Bitcoin, which means that these tightly controlled payment systems, right? Bitcoin is very different than those. Bitcoin does not require identification. It's cheaper to use. You can't reverse transactions, so it's more secure. So the bottom line is OpenBazaar is not this tightly controlled existing e-commerce system. It's really genuinely free trade done without any middlemen. That's the difference.
Okay, so if I'm a shop, how do I list my things on it? Just from a user's point of view, how's it work?
So you would go to openbazaar.org, you would download the installer to your local computer, and you would run it, right? So anyone who's installed Skype or any other program on their computer is familiar with this process. Basically, what they'll see when the app first starts is a list of goods and services from other users that are using the software everywhere around the world. And if you choose to sell things, you just click on your little store button on the top right there, and it will say, a place for you to add listings or add information about your store or yourself or connect to, other social media profiles, whatever. And the rest is very much similar to the standard e-commerce experience of listing your items, putting photos, putting details about your item, putting in the shipping costs, etc. And the rest is basically like, anyone who's sold things on eBay, except the currency being used is strictly Bitcoin. There is no PayPal, there is no credit card. It's just using Bitcoin. Now, people can choose to list things in fiat currency prices, so US dollars, for example, or pounds or whatever, and the Bitcoin price would float from there. So you don't have to strictly list it in the price of Bitcoin. You can list it in currency. and then the sales happen like any other platform. The Bitcoin comes in, and the goods go out. Hopefully, everyone's happy. There is an escrow service available for people who maybe don't trust the vendor, don't know them. We have what's called a 2 of 3 multi-signature escrow, and I don't know how familiar your audience is with Bitcoin, but basically the idea is instead of having one person who controls the Bitcoin directly, you have joint ownership over the Bitcoin, and people must agree before the funds can go anywhere. So the way we use it is 2 of 3 multi-signature, which means there are 3 parties involved in the trade: the buyer, the seller, and a third party called a moderator. And any 2 of those can agree to release the funds. Hopefully those 2 people are the buyer and the seller when the trade goes through and everyone's happy. But if there's a problem, either the buyer or seller can reach out to this third party moderator who steps in and determines which party is at fault and releases funds, joins with the winning party to release funds to them. So if you trust the moderator, in theory, you should not be scammed on the network or run into problems.
Okay. So just sticking on the subject of the moderation of people, it's a 2-sided market, and all of those, you obviously have to have enough buyers and enough sellers for it to take off. And you're kind of in beta at the moment, aren't you? What's your how many people are using it now, and what's your plan for how to get it to scale and enough that people can actually credibly use it and find things on it?
So we launched the first version of the software back in April of this year. And since then, we've seen thousands of people around the world use the software, and there are currently, I don't know the exact numbers right now, but there's roughly 7,000 or 8,000 items being listed on the network at the moment. Because the network is completely peer-to-peer, right? We can't go on and monitor all of the statistics around how many transactions are happening or how many people are using the platform. It's more private than other platforms, which is a good thing. We don't want to know those numbers. But you're able to learn some things through proxy data or anecdotes, right? And it's exciting to see how many people from different countries are actually using it. There's actually an article that was posted this morning at the bitcoin.com website saying the top 5 items being sold in OpenBazaar. And it goes through all the different more popular items that are being sold on the platform right now. And it really runs the gamut. There's all kinds of different food being sold from around the world, which is fun. There's some cigarette shops that are being sold, duty-free stuff, comic books, clothing. I mean, really, it's not that much different than other e-commerce stores in terms of the mix of goods that are occurring on the platform.
Okay. So I'm super interested in the business models behind this, because 3 or 4 years ago, when I first looked at decentralization, getting how to fund it and how you pay for the software to be really good quality. What's your method, both of getting capital and of then on an ongoing basis, making sure there's enough money to make the software better?
Sure. So OpenBazaar itself is not a company or even an organization. This is just a software project, just open source software, free to use. There's no, as we mentioned before, there's no cut being taken. It's just all completely free, no fees. Now, there are companies building on top of this piece of software. So it's sort of like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is this free open source project. There's no company making money. Bitcoin itself is not a company making money, but there are companies that build on top of it. Same with OpenBazaar. The biggest and earliest company is called OB1, of which I am a co-founder, and a few of the earliest involved developers in OpenBazaar, including the person who started the project, Brian Hoffman, co-founded this company, OB1. And so we don't directly profit from OpenBazaar, right? If we were to, we do a lot of development of the code itself. If we were to introduce, a fee into the code to give us money, it would probably be forked away, and someone else would, introduce a cheaper, really free version. So we're not doing that. What we're doing is, first, we're trying to build the best product possible. We really believe that the benefits of peer-to-peer trade are substantial enough that there will be many people using it in the near future. And so we think that there are ways to offer those offer services to those users moving forward and get paid for them. So to back up for a second, the middlemen involved in trade online right now, the Amazons and eBays and whatever, it's not like the cut that they're taking is is for nothing, right? Like they are providing services to users. They're providing dispute resolution. They're providing some amount of like advertising or marketing by the fact that there's so many people on the same platform. They're providing these different services to users. The issue is you're locked into the same platform and there's no competition among those services for those users, right? eBay gives you dispute resolution by eBay, and that's all you can choose from. So what we're doing is saying you don't have to pay for any of these services, right? It's a completely, totally free platform. If you choose to pay for services, it's done on a competitive marketplace. And in theory, the services are going to be cheaper than the existing middlemen provide them. So we want to be a service provider on the network that provides better service than the middlemen on the other networks, basically.
And as part of that, you'll develop the core platform as well.
Yes. Because, I mean, just, we need to have more people to provide services to, but also like the people who founded OB1 specifically, like we were all doing this as a side project for a year in our own time, just because we thought this was something that needed to exist, right? Like we didn't go into it thinking we're going to build a company. We just wanted a cool distributed marketplace to spend our Bitcoin on. But yes, we do think the idea is valuable enough that we started a company. Now, fortunately, others agree, and we raised venture capital funding. OB1 did. So that's how we got funding in order to hire developers and really make OpenBazaar something that was professional and could actually sustain a significant amount of commerce online.
Just to get people work on it, full-time equivalent?
Your audio broke up a little bit there. I think you were asking how many people work on it. The OB1 company right now has, I believe, 9 full-time employees. But because this is a completely open source project, there's more than that who are actually contributing to the software. And there are other companies built on OpenBazaar as well. One other one that's based in the UK is called Duo Search. Or I believe they're called just Duo or Duo Money, actually. But their product is Duo Search, which is a search engine for the OpenBazaar network. They sort of crawl the network, scrape the data, and then list the stuff on the web. Because OpenBazaar is not directly accessible on the web, so they provide that service, which is really cool. If you want to check out OpenBazaar without downloading the software, though I think you should download the software and check it out, you can use Duo Search to look for listings.
Fantastic. Okay, a technical question. So there's obviously a few complicated technologies in it. I'm particularly interested in what the state of like building a network is and the firewall punching kind of thing. And in if you have distributed search, how that works, or just generally any particular technical things inside the code that are interesting to mention.
Yeah, so it's really hard to build a distributed app. Part of that is you have to build something that works across all the different users' operating systems and all the different versions of their operating systems and all the different users' networks, which can be, there's so many different types of network configurations. And so if you look at the different variations there can be for any person's computer, there's thousands of them. And we have to build something that works on all of them, which is really difficult to do. We found early on that it was simpler to use UDP instead of TCP for NAT traversal and stuff. And so where it's the current version 1.0 right now uses UDP. That does prevent some things from functioning, like for example Tor. People would like to be able to use this over Tor for more anonymity or privacy. That's currently not possible because it's only UDP. Now, we are transitioning to, we're actually building basically a new version of OpenBazaar entirely called 2.0 naturally. And that has some very interesting technical differences from the current version. One is that the backend, the server side, is going to be based on IPFS. And you're probably familiar with IPFS, but for those that aren't, it's the Interplanetary File System. Basically, it allows a much more distributed web than sort of the standard HTTP-based web right now. So anyway, we're using IPFS. That allows the data for any one store and the listings for any one store to be distributed across other OpenBazaar users. So if your store goes down, So right now, if you're running OpenBazaar in the 1.0, you run basically a server yourself. If your store goes offline, if you lose your internet connection, you close your laptop, your store's offline. In 2.0, that's not going to be the case. Your store should remain online if other people have visited it, because they are basically seeding your information to the rest of the network using this IPFS. So that, building on IPFS, which is a sort of a new platform for sort of an alternative web almost. It's new, so there's some challenges there on how to implement it, but we're very excited about the transition. We're also transitioning from Python to Go, which just makes it easier to create binaries, makes it easier to maintain dependencies, and it's just overall, I think, a better programming language for what we're doing.
Gotcha. That's a really good sign that you're building up infrastructure. So like both Bitcoin and IPFS are, relatively new, and
yes.
So it gives me a bit of optimism for like seeing lots more projects like yours. So finally, how do you see it going? How do you like OpenBazaar to end up? What would the implications be of it having less to take up?
So it's tough to say, but I would say this: if OpenBazaar or peer-to-peer trade, broadly speaking, takes a substantial proportion of trade in the future, what we're going to see is that first, trade is going to be cheaper, because currently the middleman takes a cut from each transaction. So that cut can be redistributed both to vendors, and then I would anticipate they would distribute some of the cut back to buyers to give them an incentive to use the platform. So trade would be cheaper. Trade would be more private. There's not going to be these huge central institutions that are gathering information about everyone's trade centrally. It's only going to be between people involved. So people will be able to trade more privately, and in the same vein, trade will be much more censorship resistant. People will be able to trade with each other, and there's really not a simple way to stop them. So right now, as I mentioned earlier, platforms can censor trade themselves on the government's behalf. But there are even other platforms that attempt to hide trade that's occurring, like the Silk Road or whatever. They try to sell illicit things, but those services also have a central point of failure themselves, right? Like the government or often other organizations, whatever. They can come in and literally take that server down because that's a server-based model. But with OpenBazaar, that doesn't exist, right? Like it's everyone's computer talking to everyone else. So, I mean, we're not building it for the Silk Road use case or anything, but it does allow for censorship-resistant trade to occur, and that's not really been an option in the past. So we're excited to see what may happen.
And what do you most need people to help with to make it succeed? What's your limiting factor right now?
So we are the first decentralized marketplace that really has been widely used. There's been a few other people who've tried to build these projects, but no one's really been successful. So the biggest need we have right now is simply people using it. Just tell us what works and what doesn't, right? 1.0 is sort of like, this is the first way people can even technically engage in peer-to-peer trade, but it doesn't mean that it's the best way. It doesn't mean that it's a way that average e-commerce users will be comfortable with. So we want people to come out, try the software, let us know what works and what doesn't, so that we can improve it moving forward. And of course, if you have technical experience, if you're a developer, we would love to have your help contributing to the open source side of it. We always love code contributions as well.
Fantastic. So you just need to sell stuff and buy stuff to help.
Really, that's it. Great. Sell stuff, buy stuff, and then come to us and let us know what's working well and what isn't working. We do have a Slack group, which is very active, over 3,000 people in that group. So I welcome anyone who's interested further about this to go search Slack OpenBazaar. You'll find the sign-up link. Come talk to us. We very welcoming.
Great. Thanks for talking to me.
All right. Thank you very much.
For your time.